This is an Audio Wool original.
This episode of Frightday is brought to you by Gates of Hell Chipotle Hot Sauce by Frightday. Bold chipotle flavor blended with habanero peppers for just the right burn. Kissed with garlic and passion fruit. Zero human blood, like none at all. Visit shop.frightday.com before the first batch disappears.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you'd like to support us, go to patreon.com/frightday.
Are you eating pistachios again, I see?
Well, you hear, you don't see.
Let's
be real.
Yeah, I don't see. That's gonna lie. I guess we could solve the Gilgo Beach murders, too, while we're there.
Stop it. No more. Stop filling my head with stuff. I don't have anything else.
All right, let's do this. Here we go. Yes.
Byron?
Yeah.
I'm gonna need enthusiasm and joy from you because this is. I know you don't think that this is worthy of investigation because you think it's stupid.
I never said those words.
It's really good.
Well, first of all, great to be there with you, Kelly.
Yeah.
I do have to apologize after the intensity of the Zach Baggins saga. We got to start.
Okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. We just got to start Montauk at a different place because apparently everyone in my family has COVID-19.
Oh, right. Like physically, we're in it. Yeah. No, I get you. It is. It's too bad.
Yeah.
I appreciate you not getting me sick.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. I don't believe I'm ill, but I mean, yeah, everyone that was at a family dinner around me are very sick. Not very sick. They're sick. They're infected with COVID-19.
See, that's bad.
It's not great, but I think I'm doing okay.
Really?
Yeah, I think I ran a half marathon yesterday.
What? Why?
Yeah,
what?
Well, it started out as we don't need to talk about this. Started out as like a 7, and then it just kept going. I Forrest Gumped it, kind of.
God, I'm going to puke.
Yeah, well, I actually did that. I got home and drank a Diet Shasta grape soda and threw up almost immediately.
Why would that be the first thing you put in your body
Listen,
after that?
Wasn't thinking clearly, but here we are. Crystal clear reception, miles apart.
We're going to get into it. Like, for people who want to get really deep with this the same way that I am, I'm going to suggest some side... wait, what?
Well, I mean, we should say what this is would be number one.
Welcome to Montauk, folks. Byron and I have enjoyed bringing you Frightday for the last 7 years, and we're now switching. And the podcast is going to be called... Investigating the Montauk Project with Captain Kelly.
I don't love it. It doesn't have a ring, and it's also not true.
It's true, because we're going to be lucky if I'm done in time for Moon June.
Stop. You turned Zach Baggins, which was at most a 1.25 episode arc, into...
Bullshit. There was so much going on with him.
I don't know. You turned that into 3, and now you're saying this is just a whole new program, huh?
You will soon see why. Here's a quote to get things rolling, B. We've seen the most well-known conspiracies, Area 51 and the Philadelphia experiment, sensationalized on film and television many times before. But the Montauk Project, one of the most bizarre conspiracies in our country's history, remains untapped. That was the original pitch from the Duffer Brothers for what would become
Stranger Things. It sounds familiar. Very, yeah. Interesting.
This is so closely connected that there was a lawsuit where some guy said, hey, you stole my idea for Stranger Things, and he was suing the Duffer Brothers. You know why he lost?
Because of the widely known conspiracy theory of the Montauk Project?
Yeah, thanks to Peter Moon, he lost.
Oh, and we'll be talking a lot about that guy.
Hopefully we'll be talking to him.
Quite possibly.
Get him on the email yet?
That's a Monday morning kind of
I feel like if you're talking to Peter, it's more of like a Sunday afternoon.
You think I should have
Maybe Sunday at 3 a.m. type of thing?
You think I should blast him an email on a Sunday?
Fuck yes, I do.
We'll see what...
Stranger Things does share some common threads with the ultimate story of the Montauk Project, but unlike some topics I cover, this one, I'm sorry, Byron, does not really lend itself to give us a quick summary before we dive in. I've thought about it a lot. Like a lot. I've drafted like 5 different intros. I actually think the only useful foundation that I can provide without ending up on tangents that would take full episodes in themselves is this. 120 miles from New York City, there's an area with a strange verifiable history and an exponentially stranger unverifiable history. What happened there may have involved time travel, kidnapping, monsters, and military. So, that's what we're going to be talking about for the rest of time.
No, but cool.
Montauk Project is a labyrinthian story, Byron. It reaches so far that it is actually hard to find any conspiracy theory from the 20th or 21st century that doesn't connect at some point.
Well, even I was finding threads that relate very directly to stuff I'm interested in.
To your batshit stuff. Yeah, so here's just a quick list. If you want to catch up by listening to some old episodes, do some research on your own. I'm also going to have a quick list of fictional entertainment to consume that I think would also put you on the right track.
Do you have a playlist of songs that Peter Moon likes too?
I mean, we'll get there.
Okay.
Philadelphia Experiment, which we're also going to talk about because I can't not talk about it.
Well, and we talked about it September of 2016, if you can believe it.
Wasn't that like a Captain Kelly's, though?
It was a Captain Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies. I don't believe it was ever released beyond the Patreon, but if you want to go to cult.frightday.com, I'm sure you could listen to it there.
And I'm going to be given some overview and supplemental info tonight. So Tesla, Nikola, that is. Operation Paperclip, bringing all them Nazis over. You remember that one?
Yeah, I do.
Scientology, specifically my favorite part of Scientology, which is the Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, L. Ron Hubbard trifecta. MKUltra, big connections there. Time travel.
But we're not talking Madman Markham time travel.
No, Madman is so much more tethered. Aliens, specifically Orion and Syrian aliens. Weather control, the face on Mars. Travel to Mars, Orgon, and Wilhelm Reich, sex magic, ley lines, and adrenochrome. And that's just getting started, Byron.
Oh, no.
I do think that there are some great connections to some media that keep coming up as I'm researching this stuff. So, Byron, don't laugh at me, but I do think you should either watch the first season or read the first book of The Mysterious Benedict Society.
There is a place where truth matters, even if most people don't pay attention to it.
I don't think I know anything about that.
It is a children's book.
Oh, that's probably why.
It is, but it's not like a dumb children's book. In fact, there are times where I'm reading it. You know, I'm kind of a bad mom already, and there are times when I'm reading it to Creech and Puck, and I'm like, oh, is this too much? This might be too much. But it's very interesting, and there is a chair and a helmet in that series that bears an uncanny resemblance to what we're going to talk about with the Montauk chair, which is obviously part of the Montauk experiment. I also think it would do you well to watch the movie Conspiracy Theory, though I do not condone Mel Gibson or any of his beliefs.
Not a big Mel.
I'm pretty sure he gets very little residual at this point, and if you want to, torrent it, I don't really care. But watch Conspiracy Theory because takes place in New York. He's taken to some facilities out of New York, and it's not straight Montauk, but it's definitely Montauk reference. Important to get that tether there. I think it'll help you quite a bit.
It's also kind of a pretty fun late 90s romp.
Honestly, I mean, I do love Julia Roberts. I really do. And it's got Lauryn Hill's version of Can't Take My Eyes Off of You. That's where it was from.
Conspiracy theory, why?
And then obviously you should watch The Philadelphia Experiment, 1984, I believe it was.
One day, it's 1943. The next, it's 1984.
Somehow we got moved in time.
Good Lord, there it is. He has fallen through time, but time is running out.
Now, we can't stop it, but I believe that you can.
Michael Paré, Nancy Allen.
Good luck, sailor. Go!
The Philadelphia Experiment, rated PG.
The question of what happened at Montauk, New York, on property that was once Air Force Base Camp Hero, has perhaps the most complex answer I've ever encountered, Byron. It varies a little bit depending on who you believe, what conspiracies you believe, what other historical accounts of high strangeness you happen to subscribe to. Also, how you view those who share their stories. Now, Byron, you watched one of the 8 billion hours of Montauk material that I told you would be a good primer for you today, and you didn't seem to have an overwhelmingly positive reaction to the players.
I think I may have been neutral on some of them. maybe.
Well, that's good, because there are a lot of reasons to not believe these people, but there's some pretty good reasons to at least entertain the possibility they might be telling some truth here. I am certain of one thing. After dozens of hours and thousands of pages, and I'm really not even exaggerating. I'm prone to exaggeration, but I'm really not. I'm 100% positive that something happened. And I also believe that most of the people who talk about their experiences there believe that they are telling the full truth.
This is how you started Zach Baggins, as if it even matters.
It does matter. Intent matters. I don't care what you think. I think intent matters.
Okay.
Once we wrap this wild ride up, Byron, I will give you my hypothesis about the events, fact versus fiction, implications, like what I actually think happened and what that means. But between now and then, I strongly suggest that you suspend disbelief, because if you do, it's going to be a lot more fun. I suggest that to you very firmly, Byron, but also to our amazing listeners. I think it'd be more fun for you guys too. I will be clear when we dive into something that has evidence attached, because the nature of this story makes those points somewhat infrequent.
Okay.
And beyond that, you're going to get to sort through the stories and statements, come to your own conclusion. It's a good thing to provide as framing on the conspiracy side of things. I'm going to discuss some evidence included in a 2019 NPR report for Fresh Air. You ever listen to Fresh Air? Terry Gross?
You may have heard stories about the CIA's secret experiments with LSD, through which 60s counterculture luminaries like Ken Kesey and Allen Ginsberg were first introduced to the drug. There's a lot more to the CIA's experiments with LSD, and some of it is pretty horrifying.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about that. I don't
Good
listen to that.
The dates of the Montauk events overlap with known components of MKUltra. I'm sure there are plenty more that overlap that we don't know about yet. But Byron, you and I were talking about how crazy some of this Montauk stuff sounds. But keep in mind that what I'm about to talk about from the Terry Gross piece is verifiable historical truth about our country, experiments we performed on people without their consent or even knowledge, and records that have been almost completely erased. So MKUltra is known to have happened in the 50s and 60s, right? Now, it probably almost certainly happened beyond that, but one would think that the next round of governmental effort in this arena would have a slightly more successful suppression strategy. So the fact that we don't have much hard evidence on the Montauk Project, well, it's just another good example of when it comes to our government and experimenting on its citizens, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. We did a really long series on MKUltra, so I'm going to speed through this, but Terry Gross brings up some important and not woo-woo pieces of the MKUltra story, centered around a chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. And he was the guy that constructed the experiment structure. He ran and organized, came up with the idea of MKUltra, at least for the 50s and 60s. So some of his experiments were covertly funded at universities and research centers. Others were conducted in American prisons, detention centers in Japan, Germany, and the Philippines. Tons of psychological torture. We don't need to go into the details. You can listen to the series on that.
Oh, it was episode 81, 82, 83. And episode 81 was actually Stranger Things. We covered, I think, the first 2 episodes of the series.
Oh, man, look at what a great dovetail that is. All right, well, perfect. Lots of psychological torture, which involved electroshock, huge doses of LSD, really horrific things that were done. They were done in a way that this guy Gottlieb didn't have to answer to anybody. So he just kind of got to run wild and do his thing. Byron, did you make it through our little documentary that I had you watch?
What was it called one more time?
Oh, the Montauk Chronicles.
Yes, I did. I mean, I did skip through some of the reenactment stuff because I found it pretty tedious.
I needed to reference the reenactments, so fuck you.
Well, not all of it, but I didn't make it through.
I want you to think of Sidney Gottlieb as a little bit like Jack Pruitt in the Montauk story. Okay. CIA officers in Europe and Asia basically would capture enemy agents, anybody who they thought might be expendable. And that phrase is going to come up again. They would do whatever they wanted. Drug potions, but they also, as Terry Gross reported in this article, extremes of temperature, sensory isolation, all while bombarding them with questions, trying to see if they could break down resistance and find a way to destroy the human ego. So this is a phrase that you actually hear a lot in the Montauk literature. And I know, like, you and Sam might lend towards feeling like that's a woo-woo statement, but that is exactly what the government did with MKUltra. So these were projects designed not only to understand the human mind, but to figure out how to destroy it. Okay? And again, Gottlieb was completely unsupervised. Tons of people died. Nobody was checking up on him. They really didn't care as long as we didn't get in trouble for anything. He basically had like a checkoff point with his boss, Richard Helms, and then from the CIA director, who was Alan Dulles. None of them really wanted to know what he was doing. It was kind of just like, oh, whatever, just like don't tell us so we don't have to be,
directly involved.
Yeah.
Even though Dulles was pretty hands-on in a lot of awful things. So.
Yeah, and basically what they were saying is this is important stuff because there were experiments like this going on during World War II with the Nazis. They were doing horrible experiments, and a lot of stuff was focused on this idea of mind control. And the general belief was, especially during freaking Cold War, whoever can figure out mind control is going to have the key to world domination. Keep in mind, we've already gone past nuclear weapons at this point. Once both parties had those, it was a bit of a standstill, unless you're a complete madman, right? But if somebody can master mind control first, then they win. Mm-hmm. So they were putting any resources and like zero ethics adherence to any type of treaties or human rights agreements or anything. This was horrible.
Yeah, after the nuclear bomb was created, something so devastating, we kind of threw everything into spycraft and psyops.
Exactly.
And that's pretty much where we've been since then.
It is. I mean, other than the UFOs. But
well,
so Gottlieb, it's known that a lot of the evidence he had about these experiments was destroyed. So we know he did stuff, but we don't even know the full depth of what he did. And what we do know is scary enough. So again, keeping in mind this was, at least 15 years before the worst of the Montauk stuff happened. So they were probably covering their asses a lot better. Really, really, really scary. And I want you to think about that, Byron. Every time I say something that you're like, well, there's no evidence. We barely have the evidence of MKUltra. We have just enough to know that it is 100% fact.
Oh, I mean, we had the whole, what was it, a joint hearing in 1977?
We did, but a ton of the physical documentation and paperwork was destroyed.
Yeah.
Easily denied. There was just enough to hold people accountable and to paste together a story that couldn't be swept away. But I don't think they'd make that same mistake twice.
So in your opinion, like beyond MKUltra's provability and things like the Tuskegee Airmen stuff.
We've been horrible.
Well, but how horrible do you think we actually have been? If these are the only few accounts where we've been held to...
See, I believe from what you're saying, I would take it in the opposite direction.
Do you think that there's just so many things that we've got a couple of events that we're throwing under the bus?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that there are so many things, and that's why, well, I'm not going to spoil my assessment, but...
Cool.
You ever been to Montauk?
I got close. I flew into New York. I had to make the call. I could go to Montauk or I could drive up to Salem, and I went to Salem.
Oh. I think the first reference point I have for Montauk is actually...
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, yeah.
Maybe in Montauk.
Me as well. I'm not an East Coast guy. There's this band Circa Survive, wrote a song called Meet Me in Montauk, which I imagine is more based on the movie than the place, but still. Nonetheless.
Oh, you mean based on Eternal Sunshine?
Yeah.
It's really pretty, actually. And it's surrounded by the Hamptons, but very different vibe. Let's go through a little bit of the history, because you know how I do love talking about the history.
Of course.
The specific area we're talking about, because Montauk is actually big. This is Camp Hero State Park, okay? It's adjacent to the Montauk Lighthouse. Mm-hmm. Lots of parking there. It's a 700-plus acre property, which includes a 400-acre former military base. It used to be known as Camp Hero.
And Montauk itself is almost as far east as you can get in Long Island, New York.
Yeah, it's tippity top. It is also a national historic site. Camp Hero is. As with so many other things we talk about, there's clearly a rich Native American history to this land. Archaeological records do show that they occupied this specific location of Long Island at least 3,000 years before European contact. Could have been much longer than that, but that's what we have so far. They got their name from the land they lived on, Montaukett, meaning hilly country. So their word for a description of the land, and then we now call it Montauk as like a bit of a bastardized version of the tribe's name. Grew crops, lots of berries. They also ate clams.
Oh, shucks.
And deer and fish. They even hunted whales, which I thought was really cool. I don't know that I've read a lot about hunting of whales on East Coast, what's now America. Hear about that with, Inuit and some of the First Nations people in Canada, but I don't know why. I just hadn't heard about that for American tribes. So that was pretty cool. They had an interesting relationship with the European settlers, so they actually established an alliance with settlers in Connecticut in 1637. And then the first European settlers that settled in East Hampton came from Massachusetts. They purchased land from the Montauk Indians, which is interesting.
Whoa. What kind of Americans are they?
Well, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there was plenty of exploitation involved.
There's a bit of deception in the bargain.
Yeah, they paid like 4 ears of corn and
2 pelts.
Right. Yeah. No. But what's cool about this is obviously written from our side of history, but it sounded like a little bit different than some of the other arrangements that I've read about. So the land that they purchased extended from Southampton's eastern boundary to Napague Beach, and it wasn't until 1665 part of the Montauk tribe gave the settlers the right to pasture their livestock on Montauk. So they were like, they adapted to use European methods in terms of exchange for what they were giving the settlers. And again, who knows what the real story was, but this perspective, and I read it in a couple of places, that at least gave the impression that there was a little bit more of a two-way street. Over time, they started actually selling the land. So for a long time, it was just like a dual use, almost like a right to use the land. And then they started selling chunks of it. Unfortunately, smallpox epidemic killed about 2/3 of the Montauk people in 1650. From that point forward, it was more and more overrun with Europeans. Attempts over the years to turn the town into a village really didn't work, like formally incorporating it.
I was going to say, how do you town into a village? Doesn't that go the other direction?
I think there's a different governmental structure if it's a village versus a town.
Okay.
This was really sad. In the early 1900s, the Montauks tried to reassert their land rights on Long Island by petitioning a judge, New York State. His name was Abel Blackmar. He refused to recognize them as an Indian tribe, which has to this day left them without a reservation, even though the land is named after them. So they have no reservation and they are not a federally recognized tribe.
Wonder how they could get away with doing that.
Yeah,
not
shocking.
Surprised.
Yep. Maybe I've got it too.
Stop.
Another interesting visual for me here, they had annual cattle drives. So as the settlers were using this land for their cattle, sheep, and horses, they would do these cattle drives from May 1st to November 1st with like 1,200 to 1,500 cattle from all over eastern Long Island. And I just think about this really interesting history here. It's just not what I think of when I think of the East Coast. So it's kind of helped me reframe the way I look at this area and perhaps some of the history that might lend itself to some of the strange things that have happened there. Lighthouses. We always love lighthouses.
You love lighthouses.
I do love lighthouses. George Washington wanted a lighthouse there, and so he commissioned it to be built in 1797. It's the oldest lighthouse in New York. It is still operational, and it also runs as a museum for the Historical Society. It's very beautiful. Captain Kidd supposedly left 2 chests of gold in Money Pond. Nobody's ever found it, but supposedly he left them there. There were also bootleggers, like during the 1920s. Rum runners and different Prohibition-era gangsters would send signals, take the liquor out in the boat under the cover of darkness, and then they would bring it into the sand dunes in small boats when nobody was watching, and they'd dig it and bury it kind of like pirate treasure. And then it would be moved to New York City for all of the fancy parties, like a Great Gatsby.
Okay.
I keep thinking about Gatsby.
Did
you ever read that?
No, I don't care about that. But I can tell that even though we're miles apart, your eyes are lighting up at the idea of a speakeasy or a...
Do the Charleston?
Yeah.
You know that knee thing where you like move your arms and your legs at the same time? It makes it look like you're doing something really goofy with your knees and arms. All right. Long Island Railroad extended its line to Montauk in 1895.
What are you talking about? Why are we talking about Montauk so much?
Well, because this is where everything's going to happen.
Yeah, at a military base.
Well, fine. I'll fast forward. World War I.
It's so
U.S.
boring.
Shut up. History isn't boring, you fucker.
I don't care about the cattle drives. What are we talking about? Is that scary to you?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Here we go.
Fucker. World War I, U.S. Naval Training Station and a naval aviation base were established. And then in World War II, Army and Air Force took over most of the point, and then the Navy just took over Fort Pond Bay, which is a little piece of it. This is pretty cool. In World War II, they made it look like a fishing village. It was used as a defense against possible German submarines and ships coming in, and they just made it look like a sleepy fishing village so the Germans might think it was a safe place to land, and they'd be like, "Ha, we got you!"
Did the Germans...
We're actually the military!
The Germans got kind of close, right?
They snuck on a couple of times. I remember reading an article about, I think, 3 different times that they snuck on. Did I ever do the report? The guy that had the plane hijacked had some mansion and there was a treasure in the mountains.
I don't think so.
And the Germans supposedly came on somewhere near here, but not exactly here. I definitely researched it for a report. I just can't remember if I ever did one.
I'll have to look back. I mean, we've been doing this for 7 years.
We have.
General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe.
So then, after World War II, it became a location for a very specific type of defense, which makes me super nervous because anytime I start thinking about nuclear war, I get really freaked out. But Cold War era SAGE radar towers, and this is where I wish Sam was here because he could tell us more about SAGE. It's an acronym.
The semi-automatic ground environment system to strengthen our air defenses, giving it a speed of operation sufficient to defend us against mass jet bomber attacks. With the advent of supersonic jet aircraft, it became apparent that the manual air defense system, so long in use against the threat from slower planes, could no longer provide adequate protection.
But there were 19 others on the eastern seaboard, essentially. Each of the big ones would pick up signals from the smaller ones, and in the event of a Soviet nuclear attack, we would have an extra 30-minute warning because of these huge radar towers.
Yeah, it's an early automated air defense system.
Very, very scary. And so this thing is 90 feet tall, 40 feet wide, and that's kind of the big iconic symbol that gets thrown out when you hear references of the Montauk Project, because apparently the use of that tower did not end with the Cold War.
And of course, we'll have an image of that in the show notes of this episode of Frightday.com.
Of course we will. Yes. All right, so Byron, sorry, I'm done with most of the history now.
Hey, it's late.
There are some that believe that there was
COVID.
A nuclear reactor that was built there. You don't actually have it. Don't say that. There are some that believe that there was a nuclear reactor built there in about 1958, 59. And again, this was part of the Cold War stuff. I don't really buy into this, or maybe I'm just not understanding the logic here. But the idea is some people believe that the nuclear reactor was built there, and then the government immediately put out these disinfo stories about crazy things happening at Montauk and crazy human experiments that were going on to deflect from the fact that there was actually a real nuclear reactor there. But again, I don't think that makes sense. Because
it doesn't.
If they're trying to deflect, they should say 50 miles down the road, there's something really weird going on. Don't get people curious about the base and then finding the nuclear reactor. That seems like a bad idea.
Talking about weirder shit is not going to make me want to go there less.
Yep. Byron, how much do you remember about our initial report on the Philadelphia experiment? How long was that episode?
Oh, probably 40 minutes. I don't know. I know that there was a couple of brothers who were up to no good.
Oh, no, they were up to good. They weren't doing anything bad.
And then they jumped off a ship. And
they did jump off a ship.
That's pretty much all I remember. I do know where they landed and when they landed. Kind of.
Even that point is a little bit up for debate. Before we get to our core players in the Montauk Project, we do have to give a foundation for the Philadelphia experiment, because it was the Philadelphia experiment that gave way to the Montauk Project. And Byron, you may know the story of those brothers and some weird stuff that happened on that day, but what you may not know is how the world came to hear about the Philadelphia experiment in the first place, because it was not our friend Al Bielek, nor was it our friend Duncan Cameron, or even our friend Preston Nichols, but rather it was a gentleman named Morris K. Jessup from Indiana. He was born in 1900. He got his doctorate at the University of Michigan, and he was an astronomer, very well respected. He discovered some of the earliest double stars that are now cataloged by the Royal Astronomical Society of London. Then the Depression hit. So like other people, he was trying to get some kind of a job. He wasn't really much of a manual laborer. He had all this education, but those jobs were few and far between. So first he was assigned by the U.S. Department of Ag to go to the Amazon, not Bezos's place, but like the actual Amazon, to study sources of crude rubber.
It's kind of like the same as finding maple syrup in Vermont. You're just tapping trees for rubber, right?
I mean, there's the destruction of indigenous people and all that stuff, I guess.
Sure.
But what happened to Jessup on this trip was basically the start of a chain of events that has led to me sitting here having just ordered a chunk of corkboard 8 feet by 10 feet because
with the business card
he opened up a can of worms that cannot be ever contained again.
String is coming, board is as well.
So I'm positioning it so that I can have 3D too, because it's going to be in a corner split between two sides.
Okay.
So that I can do like a cross and do like 3-dimensional strings.
You're doing like a cat's cradle between your string boards?
Yes, I am.
What? All right, this is ridiculous.
It's going to be so good.
No, I hate it.
Excited. But that all started because Jessup got assigned by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to go mess around with rubber trees. But when he was there, he became a photographer. And he went on an archaeological expedition to the Mayan ruins in Central America.
Hanging on the Yucatan.
Then he went to Peru. And he studied the pre-Incan culture. And in Peru, studying these massive ruins, he began to wonder what the hell could have helped build these. And he was one of those people that said there must have been some levitating sky ships that helped build these things. He was one of the first modern scientists to believe in the ancient astronauts theory. And I know that that comes with some pretty negative connotations these days, but let me just tell you, Jessup was a stand-up fella, and he was very smart. He was really well respected until he started talking about these things. Pretty soon he got really alienated, but he wasn't going to give up. He continued doing a bunch of research on his own and basically would work jobs just to earn enough money to go do more research. He found craters in Mexico that he found had a similar structure to mysterious craters on the moon. He discovered at this point that the U.S. Air Force had highly classified photos of these exact Mexican craters. So this guy was like a pioneer. He's like figuring out that the Air Force is investigating these things and he thinks something's up and everybody says he's crazy for thinking that something's up. But then he sees that the military thinks something's up too because they're taking photos.
Something's up and alienated, and you aren't acknowledging this at all.
What do you mean?
Something up and alienated? And we're talking about UFOs?
Oh, sorry. I'm really excited. I wasn't even noticing.
What year was this?
This was like 1954. So he was almost out of money. Came to the U.S., was trying to raise money for his research. And this was when like the flying saucer craze that had started in the 40s really ramped up in the early 50s. He was interested in it at that point, but after all of this research and this travel, now he was really interested in it. And from what he had learned in all of these places, he was convinced that UFOs were definitely a possibility that needed more investigation. And he felt like he had enough foundation to prove that it warranted investigation. So he moved to Washington, D.C. and spent an entire year doing extensive research for the book, The Case for the UFO. Now, sold well enough that in the fall of 1955, so it came out the very beginning of 1955, and then in the fall they did a paperback edition. Shortly after it was published, he got a really weird letter. This letter was written in several colors of ink. The subject of the letter was even stranger than the punctuation and phrasings. A gentleman by the name of Carlos Allende was very interested in the ideas he had read in Jessup's book. He spoke a lot about levitation, a lot about how much he agreed with Jessup's theories that our megaliths had to have been built using the technique of levitation. He assured Jessup levitation was not only scientifically possible, but commonplace on Earth. And Jessup was really interested, kind of like, well, either this guy is crazy and interesting or he's talking about something that I need to know more about. So he wrote back and said, hey, tell me more. Now, unfortunately, as he was beginning this communication with Carlos Allende, he was also obligated to do a bunch of press tours for his book. And he was working on his second book, The UFO and the Bible.
Yeah.
And he got drawn up in all this stuff and kind of forgot about the letter. And then during the next year, he was getting pushed for research.
Got another book.
Got another one coming. And while he's getting pushed for, spitting out another book, he came upon something when he was researching Einstein's unified field theory, or Einstein's effort to find a unified field theory, I should say. He found something about the Philadelphia experiment, which reminded him of the letter that Mr. Allende had sent him, because this was one of those strange things that Allende mentioned in that letter. It sounded very similar to some of the stuff he was learning about what Einstein had been researching. So on January 13th, 1956, 1 year after his first book was published, Jessup got another letter. Now, Byron, I really want to read this whole letter, but it's really long.
How long is it?
Well, I mean, in Google Docs pages, about 3.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I really would like you to read it, especially because it is very strange.
I don't think we can read the whole thing, but we'll see what happens. My dear Dr. Jessup, your invocation to the public that they move en masse upon their representatives and have thusly enough pressure placed at the right and sufficient number of places where from a law-demanding research into Dr. Albert Einstein's unified field theory may be enacted, 1925 through 1927, is not necessary at all. Are the capitalizations, is that the same?
Yeah, so this is what I'm talking about. Like, the details of the way this is typed out is exactly the same.
And
it doesn't make sense.
It may interest you to know that the good doctor was not so much influenced in his retraction of that work by mathematics as he most assuredly was by humanities. His later computations, done strictly for his own edification and amusement upon cycles of what is this? You really?
Yep.
Of the cycles of human civilization and progress compared to the growth of man's general overall character was enough to horrify him. Thus, we are told today that the theory was incomplete.
Okay, pause.
Yeah.
So just some cliff notes on that. Okay, so everybody talks about Einstein's effort to find a unified field theory, something that made everything make sense, which is a really dumbed down way to explain it, but that's all I'm going to go into right now.
Okay.
Allende is telling Jessup, hey, actually he found it, but what he realized after finding it was so horrifying, and that the direction man was headed was so terrible that he didn't want to release it. He kept it hidden, and that's why we think it's incomplete, but it wasn't really incomplete.
Dr. B. Russell asserts privately that it is complete. He also says that man is not ready for it and shan't be until WW3. Nevertheless, results of my friend Dr. Franklin Reno were used. These were a complete recheck of that theory with a view to any and every possible use of it. I cannot believe how affected I am by the weird capitalization. This is like reading a Donald Trump tweet. It's killing me.
Except way bigger words.
For sure. Kofefe. Wait, what? If feasible in a very short time. There were good results, and as far as a group math recheck, and as far as a good physical result to boot. Yet, the Navy fears the use of this result. The result was and stands today as proof that the united field theory, to a certain extent, is correct. Beyond that certain extent, no person in his right senses, or having any senses at all, will evermore dare to go. This, you've received emails like this, right, Kelly?
Yeah, I have. But nothing this cool. This cool. So basically he's, again, just asserting that there are some people that know the result, and it does exist. We can't go there because it's very bad.
That's your cliff note right there. Okay. Should I keep going?
Yes, you should.
I'm sorry that I misled you in my previous missive. True enough, such a form of levitation has been accomplished as described. It is also a very commonly observed reaction of certain metals to certain fields surrounding a current, this field being used for that purpose. Interesting. This is pretty early on. It's 1950, and they're talking about that.
I know. See, this is, yeah, exactly. Keep going. See, there you go.
Had Faraday concerned himself about the magnetic field, he shortened mag, okay. Why would he choose to shorten that word?
I don't know.
Mag field surrounding an electric current, we today would not exist, or if we did exist, our present geopolitical situation would have the very time-bombish ticking off towards destruction atmosphere that now exists.
Okay, so Faraday was a reference to Michael Faraday.
Yeah, the Faraday cage guy.
Yeah, which you probably only know because of Lost, but that's okay.
Oh, no, I only know it because they sell it to true patriots to block the 5G from your phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I wonder if they cite this letter when trying to sell it.
I don't know. The result was complete invisibility of a ship, destroyer type, and all of its crew while at sea. October 1943. The field was effective as an
in an oblate spheroidal shape.
So it's a double circle, basically.
Spheroidal shape. I actually could show you what it looks like. It's a very confusing thing. And this is, well, the math that they do and that they explain, I get just enough of to know that they're not making it up.
Extending 100 yards, more or less, due to lunar position and latitude out from each beam of the ship. Wow. Any person within that sphere became vague in form, but he too observed those persons aboard that ship as though they were of the same state, yet were walking upon nothing. Any person without that sphere could see nothing save the clearly defined shape of the ship's hull in the water, providing, of course, that the person was just close enough to see it, just barely outside of that field. Why tell you now? Very simple. If you choose to go mad, 116 anti-gravity in the world grid, then you would reveal this information. What information? What's 116 anti-gravity, Kelly?
What is element 116?
Oh, God. That's the Bob Lazar element.
Is it?
Nope. That's...
Livermorium.
It's different. It's a synthetic chemical
element. It is a radioactive element, though.
It's only been synthesized in laboratories, not observed in nature.
Well, this wasn't a very natural thing. Keep going.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Half of the officers and the crew of that ship are present, mad as hatters. A few are even yet confined to certain areas where they may receive trained scientific aid when they either, quote, go blank or go blank and get stuck. An after effect of the man having been within the field too much is not at all an unpleasant experience to healthy, curious sailors. However, it is when they get stuck that they call it Hell Incorporated. The man thusly stricken cannot move of his own volition unless one or more of those who are within the field go and touch him. It's freeze tag, I guess. Quickly.
Okay, so let me just explain this a little bit. So the people who were part of this experiment would get stuck in this like weird state. Okay, they would like blank out. They would disappear, or they would like freeze and they couldn't move. Think about Free Guy.
the Ryan Reynolds movie?
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yep. Okay.
Just like that. Okay.
So they're turned off.
And he's saying that if some of the other sailors would go over and touch him, they would like then unfreeze. However, once in a while, very scary things happen. Keep going.
Okay, if a man freezes, his position must be marked out carefully, and then the field is cut off. Everyone but that frozen man is able to move. This is ridiculous. To
keep going.
Appreciate apparent solidity again, then the newest member of the Krez must approach the spot where he will find the frozen man's face or bare skin that is not covered by unusual uniform clothing. Sometimes it only takes an hour or so, sometimes all night and all day long, and worse, it once took 6 months to get the man unfrozen. This deep freeze was not psychological. It was a result of a hyperfield that is set up within the field of the body, where the scorch field is turned on, and this is at length or upon a old hand. This is the ravings of a lunatic that you're making me read.
No.
Did you find
you're
this
not understanding it.
in a notebook on the street? What is going on?
No, this was literally, Byron. This is why this is so important. This is the birth of Philadelphia experiment.
I
this is the first time this stuff was talked about
I recognize it
to anyone. Okay?
This
no. But Byron.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
you
losing
might
it.
need to maybe like do the rest of the reading as bonus content or something.
Yeah,
but
I can't.
It really needs to be read. It's so important. The thing is
can't.
so important.
We got like, nah. This is okay. I understand what's going on here, but what did Jessup do with this information?
Funny you should ask. He tried to investigate it, but he couldn't find any physical evidence.
Oh, big surprise. Come on now.
No, Byron, you are, God, just get ready because Byron, I'm going to blow your mind. You just wait. Give me like 5 minutes and your mind's going to get blown out of the fucking water.
Sure.
Okay, so Carlos Allende, Jessup's like, okay, wow, this is a really big deal. It seems really interesting. I can't find anything to support you. But you see then, like 6 months later, he gets contacted by the Office of Naval Research. You want to know why?
Because of the ravings.
No. They had received a copy of his book, annotated in 3 separate colors, 3 different handwritings, one of which was supposed to belong to an alien. And the notes claimed to have an understanding of physics, extraterrestrial technology, and there were references everywhere to the Philadelphia experiment. In fact, the annotators discussed the merits of Jessup's claim and referenced the Philadelphia experiment multiple times.
And wait, who approached him with this information?
The Office of Naval Research, because they're like, we have your book here.
But
did you send this to us?
And they admitted that an alien.
No. Like literally, you can get copies of this.
Okay.
Which we're going to talk about in a second. But there are 3 different sets of annotations on this book. One of those 3 sets, at some point in the writing, claims to be an extraterrestrial.
Sure. Okay.
Annotating the book. Okay.
Well, the Navy believes this?
Well, the Navy's like, can you tell us what the fuck is going on? Like,
sure.
You would think that they didn't believe it, right? Okay. But they said that in this book, there were discussions about how the people that were annotating had a complete understanding of the physics behind how UFOs flew, extraterrestrial technology. And in fact, if you look at some of the notes, it's slightly odd in its familiarity with some of the discussions I have heard among physicists about the much more recent declassified UFO videos around naval vessels. Jessup says, well, the way you're describing this, I think one of those at least has to be this weird dude that was writing me this letter. It's the only other time I've heard somebody talk about the Philadelphia experiment. So what did the Office of Naval Research do rather than just going, oh, it's a fucking crazy person? Okay. Well, thanks for letting us know, dude. They had it published with the notes. They ran like 127 copies of it at Vero Manufacturing. So these are now called the Vero Edition, which I've been trying to get my hands on, like a good version of one, because there are a lot of them out there, but I haven't been able to find a good version of one that I can read coherently. Mm-hmm. What happens from this point on is a little bit disputed. It's 1957, okay? And Jessup's doing a lot of research still, but suddenly he kills himself.
I don't know how sudden it was.
Well, okay, so it does seem strange. There are a lot of people that knew him that said that did not seem like something that he ever would have done. They also said if he was depressed, it would have been tied to the outreach from the Navy. They kept contacting him. So one of his friends who'd known him for like 15 years said, yeah, the Navy kept asking him about the notes in his book, wanted him to help them continue some research that they had already done with the Philadelphia experiment because they believed that he understood more than they understood because of his notes in the book, and he didn't want to help, and he was really upset about it, and that might be why he killed himself. But
well, his wife left him too.
Well, depends on which story, but there is a story from some of his friends that his wife left because his wife wanted him to help the military because she felt like that was his patriotic duty, and he felt like it was a really bad idea because if any of it was true and these people really had experienced a terrible thing in 1943 and gotten stuck and blanked out and frozen and all sorts of strange things, right?
Well, what about the series car wreck that he was in too? He was pretty banged up after apparently it took a toll on him as well.
Do you have the events surrounding the attack? Pardon me, the car wreck, I mean.
Uh-oh. Do you know?
The problem here is
it's all hearsay.
We don't know for
course.
sure. It is all very much hearsay. I actually have been looking at whether I can go and get information
like
from
hospital
him
record?
about him at the National Archives.
Oh, while you're in Washington, D.C.?
Mm-hmm.
Good thing the series will be long done before then, right?
Oh, no. Oh, God, no. No, it's not going to be done by then. Fucking kidding me?
I mean, who
no, I'm
knows?
going to keep going forever.
I don't know about that. So you're implying that he may have been a target of a government attack.
Well, he published his last book in 1957, The Expanding Case for the UFO. It was a little bit more off the rails, shall we say. He was definitely struggling.
Like financially or mentally?
Well, I mean, it's so easy to construct a story that makes it easy to write somebody off. I do think that what happened here is questionable at best.
Mm-hmm.
He was in an accident, a car accident, that was potentially intentional. Not him, somebody hitting him. He was left by his wife.
The books hadn't been doing very well.
But that wasn't really his deal. Like, he was typically annoyed to be plugging the books. He just wanted to do research and write them. Like, he wasn't concerned about whether they were super successful. He was a researcher. He was super nerdy and that's what he wanted to do.
Well, why do you think the final book was a bit more controversial? Sensational?
I mean, it was controversial for sure, but that ship had sailed a long time ago, so that wasn't a big concern either.
Oh, okay.
There are reports that when he was found, he was still alive and possibly allowed to die.
Oh, and
again,
his technique for killing himself, doing the old exhaust pipe hose method.
Yeah.
You're saying that they found him and then just let him die?
But don't people always do that in their garage? Like, he went to this park to do it. That just seemed weird.
No, that famous you should kill yourself texting case, that's how the kid did it as well. And no, he ran, I feel like he ran a gas generator inside of his car.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I don't recall, but I do recognize that there is the garage method, but I think the hose situation would do the trick as well. So
yeah, well,
awful, sad that he did apparently kill himself. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he may have, he may not have, but here's where it circles all around to my deep dive into the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project. One of the central players, who we will discuss at length, is a gentleman named Alfred Bielek, son of Arthur and Albertina.
Yeah, that's the real name.
Real name. And he was on Art Bell twice. 2 long interviews, just him. One discussing the Philadelphia experiment and one discussing the Philadelphia experiment and a bit of Montauk. So Carlos Allende is actually Carl Allen. Okay, his name was actually Carl Allen.
The author of that bizarre note?
Yeah, the weird note. During Al Bielek's second interview with Art Bell, they do call-ins, right? And so caller calls in, some guy from Colorado.
Morning. I have a question to ask Al.
All right, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Greeley, Colorado.
Greeley,
okay?
Colorado. Okay,
yes.
Go ahead.
Just wondering what Al thinks about Carlos Allende, better known as Carl Allen.
Right.
And how come he hadn't come forward over the 30 years that Carlos was running around telling everybody this happened?
Kind of attacks Al. You know, this is great that you're coming out and telling this story now, but where the hell were you for the last 20 years that Carl Allen's been trying to get somebody to believe him?
That's a good question. Carl Allen, whom I do remember from the Navy days as Edward Cameron, was a naval officer. He was on the SS Perioseth as an observer placed there by the Navy. And he was also a physicist. Actually, he was, I believe, a PhD in physics, and he was part of the bomb project at Los Alamos. And he retired out of the Navy, and then he led a very strange life as a recluse, and still is, and he is alive today.
No, he passed away.
He just died.
We did?
Yeah, he passed away this week.
This
week? We just buried him Thursday here in Greeley.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
So were we.
And it's like literally one of Carl Allen's best friends who lives down the street from him, and Carl Allen had died like 3 days prior.
Because I had talked with him on the phone about last July when I was up in Colorado, and he was hoping I could make arrangements to come visit with him.
Yeah, he was, matter of fact, it was just this last week.
I am sorry to hear that.
Well, that makes all of us then. Thank you very much, caller.
Okay.
So the number of people, Al, who can tell this story are dwindling.
Dwindling rapidly.
So the full circle was Al Bielek had contacted Carl Allen. Carl Allen did swear that this was true and had happened. He believed that Jessup had been murdered. Then the question was, because Al Bielek kind of did 2 episodes in close succession with Art, because people loved the first one. They were like, oh my God, this is crazy. In between those was when he had talked to Carl Allen and was going to come out and speak and get more information from him about what he knew. And then suddenly he turns up dead. Who knows? I mean, it very well could be that Morris Jessup was really into the UFO stuff and then felt like Carlos Allende, Carl Allen, McGillicuddy had just pulled the wool over his eyes and he felt like an idiot. And so maybe that's why he did himself in. But maybe there was something more significant going on. I mean, he was a smart guy. His actual astronomical work is still a part of what astronomers study today. So he wasn't a moron and he wasn't way out of left field. It could be that there was a tragic end in terms of nefarious circumstances, but could be that it was just tragic that he was one of many UFO researchers that did not get satisfaction of being heard and taken seriously. I don't know, but I will tell you, when I was listening to that interview with Bielek, and that guy calls up and starts talking about Carl Allen, and I'm, oh my God, I was like, wow, okay, so this all does fully circle back. Now, just quick side note, there was a book that came out in 1981 called The Jessup Dimension, written by a woman named Anna Likens Genslinger, and she said that she had determined how Jessup died through the guidance of his ghost.
Jesus fucking Christ. Really?
But they were on really good terms. She referred to him as Ketch. Like Morris Ketchum Jessup was his full name. She knew him as Ketch.
Ketch, cool.
And he was the victim of secret government entities, ACA Men in Black, who were concerned about his special knowledge of such matters as the Philadelphia experiment. So there you go.
Yeah, okay. Well,
one more to loop in. We've got the Men in Black here too.
I mean, it's not the first time that we've talked about the government taking out people. We can go back to, what was Phil Schneider? That was the deep underground bases.
Nope.
We're gonna get to that eventually.
We're gonna get there.
Oh fuck! All right.
You fucking leave Schneider out of this until I am ready to bring him in.
I hate it.
Do you understand me?
Yeah. All right.
Byron.
Yeah.
Welcome to Montauk. How are you doing?
Well, I mean, considering I feel like my little tootsies just dipped into the topic of Montauk.
Like half of the nail on your pinky toe.
Overwhelmed?
Yeah, don't even tell me about it.
Intimidated by that letter that was like dumb smart?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
You're going to read the rest of it, though.
We'll see. Might do it on the live stream, twitch.tv/Frightday.
Byron?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excited.
Very
happy.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
It's going to be an interesting month, I would hope. A month.
You would hope.
It's going to be a great month. And
yes, it is. Months.
Nah, we're sticking with one probably. I feel like we just stepped off a boat, Kelly, and here we are, almost to Montauk.
Careful. Now do you understand why I keep asking all of our new cult members to do research and send me summaries?
Yeah. I mean,
that newsletter I sent you a picture of. Literally, I have 120 of those that I need reviewed and summarized.
Okay, so Kelly, I'm going to say you take a break for tonight. Thank you so much for that report. Just looking forward to diving headfirst into this Montauk experiment. It's going to be a month of madness and chaos and a murder.
Yeah?
It's going to be fun. But until next episode, Kelly, where are you going to be?
Oh, you're going to find me at Kelly Frightday on Twitter. Email me, kelly@frightday.com. Also, I'm pretty sure this links to some kind of conspiracy involving Dr. Ugly.
Okay.
And I really need to figure out what the fuck's going on with that because I am angry.
And I'm at Byron McKoy on Twitter and Instagram. Byron@frightday.com is my email address. And until next episode of Frightday, I'm Byron.
I'm Kelly. Stick to proper capitalization?
Please, and stay scared. You've been listening to an Audio Wool original, produced by Byron McKoy, theme music provided by Cemeteries. For more programs like this, visit audiowool.co.